We always use it for evil. Every time we use it for evil. Hello, fellow netizens, and welcome to Scandalous Games, the show where we take a closer look at video game-related controversies. I'm Kevin Impellizeri, and I do the research and share a story of a video game-related controversy to my friends.
Hi, I'm Phil Thomas, and you can always consider me to be a video game newbie.
Elford Stephens, a long-term fan of video games, and definitely a fan of learning about all these controversies.
And I'm Andy Hunter, a longtime gamer, but in my little nook for Nintendo stuff.
What would you say if I told you that there might be a way that we could make a whole lot of money?
I'd say, show me the money.
I would say also show me the money.
Well, I would say, let me show you my money so I can be first to sign up for your $1 million idea.
All right, here's my idea. 2 words, Scandal Coin. We are getting into crypto. We're going to make our own Scandalous Games related cryptocurrency. We're going to have an initial coin operating eventually. And I'm going to tell you that one Scandal coin is going to be worth $10 million. Why do I know that? Because I said it is. And it's going to guarantee us a lot of money, at least particularly for me. So what I want to ask for our listeners is you're going to give me a lot of money. And I will tell you, you've got a Scandal coin and it's worth $10 million. How's that sound?
I'd say you're NFT, not fucking tricking.
This sounds great.
So yeah, we're going to talk about crypto and game. What do you all think about cryptocurrencies? What are your exposure to crypto?
I'll start since I like hearing myself speak. I wish I had invested in some of these cryptocurrencies years ago when they first came out, because it seems like they were a good deal, but I don't know very much about them.
I've never dabbled. I've read enough to be very suspicious of them. And from what I've gathered, it seems like there are 2 people interested in crypto. People who want it purely as an investment, or people who want to actually use it as a currency, but only for like illegal dark web stuff.
So somebody gave me crypto once, and it wasn't worth anything then, and then it was worth something, and now it's back to being worth nothing.
So when they gave you crypto, did you have to take antibiotics or something?
Let me check to see which simplex of crypto I was given.
You know what, though? I think it's really important that you're admitting it here on this podcast, Phil, and let's destigmatize getting crypto.
Yes, this is a safe place for anyone who has gotten crypto in their life.
Yeah, Kevin, you can help me destigmatize crypto. Right?
Oh, we're going to talk about that. So I'll give you a really basic definition of cryptocurrency. We'll talk about it in more detail as we go. But basic definition of cryptocurrency is it's a decentralized digital currency that operates outside of governmental and regulatory institutions. Examples of cryptocurrency include Bitcoin, Ether, Dogecoin, and of course our brand new Scandal coin. There are some people who just won't shut up about crypto and NFTs. And so I started looking into it just because I hear so much in the news. And I was astonished to find a ton of intersections between crypto and video games, and that both of those have tons of controversies. It's like a weird 7-layer dip of bad business decisions, worse games, and just so many scams and crimes. This topic ended up being so big that it's actually going to be 2 episodes. So today we're going to do 2 things in this episode. First, I'm going to do my best to provide a brief introduction to the basics of crypto, blockchains, and NFTs. We'll see what people like about them, some of the ideology that's behind decentralized currency, because it does have quite a bit of ideology actually. And we'll also address some, in my opinion, glaring issues that hamper their long-term viability as anything other than money-making schemes. And then we'll use this to talk about their influence on gaming, specifically a new genre that emerged in the last few years that's built entirely around earning crypto. And then this will then set up our second episode, where we'll address how the crypto scene has affected the mainstream games industry and how different AAA game companies have tried to capitalize on cryptocurrency and NFTs with, to put it generously, mixed results. So before we get into this episode, I have 4 caveats I need to get out of the way. The first, I think, is pretty obvious, is we're just a bunch of guys who talk about video games on the internet, and you should not take anything we say as financial advice. I am not an economist. I am not a financial expert. I can't speak for any of the rest of you on those, but I can give you a number of reasons, not the least of which my crippling student loan debt, as to why you should not listen to any financial advice I have. Second is, because this is a video game podcast, I'm going to try to limit our discussion of crypto to the places where it intersects with gaming. Now, that being said, if you're really interested in this topic, I strongly encourage you to look into it, do your own research, because there is some wild shit connected to crypto. My favorite being a whole subculture of crypto dudes who want to buy their own islands or repurpose old cruise ships into rapture-esque sovereign nations where they're free to mine Bitcoin and fuck 14-year-olds to their heart's content.
Now, I would just say I would like to fuck a 14-year-old crypto mining machine, like one of the really, really old machines that just like, builds up way too much heat. But I mean, luckily, I don't need to buy an island for that. So I'm way ahead of those dummies.
That's interesting, Andy, because I always wondered how you got the nickname the Heat Sink.
We're really starting to open up here, aren't we? All right.
That's actually how I caught crypto. But
you beat me
to
to
I
it.
love bacon, but crypto's good too.
All right. So third, while we're going to talk about crypto and gaming, I'm not going to talk about the metaverse. So much of the metaverse is both just completely up in the air and super dumb. So we're not going to talk about the metaverse today. So think of this episode as kind of like a piece of the apple rather than the whole apple that is crypto and gaming. And finally, anyone with even a cursory understanding of cryptocurrency knows that it's an extremely volatile market and its connections to mainstream culture are still very much in flux. Some of the stories we cover today are actually still ongoing as of this recording. I'll also concede that it is entirely possible that in the short or long term that the crypto market will either completely bottom out or it'll somehow rally, persevere, and replace traditional currencies like its most vocal advocates hope that it will. As a result, this could possibly be our most ephemeral episode. Even if all of those things happen, I hope that listeners can take this episode as a historical artifact in itself, a snapshot of a specific view of cryptocurrency and gaming at a specific point in time. So with that, pulling behind the curtain, I'll tell you up front that we are recording this episode on September the 15th, 2022, and it will drop on October the 4th. The value of Bitcoin as we record is $20,119.10, and Ether is $1,589.80. Now, that does sound like a lot. However, right now, the crypto market in general is bearish. That is nowhere close to its heights where it was even less than a year ago. And as for NFTs, according to the market tracker on nonfungible.com, the NFT market is currently in the cellar. Overall sales of NFTs over the past year are down 93.81%. Unique buyers are down 89.46%, and unique sellers are down 86.87%. So by all metrics, the NFT market is tanking. But that's where we are right now. So keep that in mind. Those are my 4 caveats. Anybody else want to add anything before we get started?
I own an NFT that's dope, and I would like to show it to everybody here. That's okay?
Let's see it.
All right. Hold, please. Let me look this up.
I would just like to say, regardless of the objective dopeness of Phil's NFT, anyone who tells you their NFT is dope might just be trying to convince you that it's worth money to buy it from them. So that's the ill-informed, non-financial advice I will give everybody.
Oh, no. Andy, this NFT is way too valuable. You would have to offer me an astronomical amount of money.
Well, I definitely wouldn't agree unless I see it, and definitely do agree for half of whatever you sell it for.
So this NFT, it's like a digital trading card of NFL moments, and it's of now Eagles receiver A.J. Brown making one of the most unbelievable touchdown catches I've ever seen, where he's fighting a dude going into the end zone and somehow turns around and starts running backwards and catches the ball at his hip for a touchdown.
That clip is something else. That dude's a beast. Him against the Lions, my God.
Yeah, he's insane. So this is the one dope NFT I have. Everything else that I've ever heard of or that I own is decidedly not dope.
That's because you haven't seen the new Scandalous Games NFTs that will go with Scandal Coin, which again is worth $15 million. Yes, I said it was worth $10 million before, but the demand just skyrocketed. You got to get on board.
Yeah, you got to get in before the price goes up again.
All right. So with all that in mind, buckle up for a wild story full of hilarious hacks, scams of all kinds, and colorful characters like anarcho-capitalists, aspiring Magic the Gathering card traders, and North Korean hackers. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll stare into the abyss, only for the abyss to stare back at you and try to sell you poorly drawn pictures of apes. allow me to introduce you to Jed McCaleb. Jed McCaleb was born in Fayetteville, Arkansas in 1975. He took to computers at an early age, later recalling he first got into programming when he was in around 4th or 5th grade. Jed briefly attended college at Berkeley. However, he dropped out and moved to New York to become a freelance programmer. In 2000, he formed his own company called Meta Machine, and his first major product was a peer-to-peer file-sharing network with the extremely dot-com boom name of eDonkey 2000. However, the Recording Industry Artists of America forced Meta Machine to shut down in 2005 following a legal battle where the company had to pay the RIA $30 million in damages. Following eDonkey 2000's demise, Jed got really into gaming and tried to find ways he could monetize that. First, he tried breaking into the Magic the Gathering card collecting scene. Any Magic the Gathering players in the chat?
No, that and LARPing are two of the few nerdy interests that I have not engaged in.
I've never actually played Magic the Gathering.
I mean, I already own an NFT. I don't want to play with fire.
I have played Pokemon, the trading card game, and if I understand correctly, Pokemon is a watered-down version of Magic.
Yeah, principles are the same. In 2007, Jed bought the domain mtgox.com, which creatively stood for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange. He planned to launch mtgox.com as a site for buying, selling, and trading Magic the Gathering cards. However, I'm not sure if he got very far with this plan for people to come together and buy and sell their Black Lotus Beta, Ancestral Recall Alpha, and Foil Intuition Judge promos cards, because the Wayback Machine captures preserved by the Internet Archive of mtgox.com between 2007 and 2009 list the pages being in a beta phase with no card listings to speak of. In any case, Jed eventually decided to get out of the Magic the Gathering collecting business and try his hand at online gaming. In February of 2007, he created his own game company he called Code Collective, and in 2009, he repurposed mtgox.com to promote his new browser-based game called The Far Wilds. Now, The Far Wilds was a mix of Magic the Gathering with old-school Warcraft. It was a fantasy-themed turn-based strategy deck-building game where players built card decks to create armies to battle each other while trying to earn glory points. Players could also buy, sell, and trade cards with other players to build better and stronger decks. McCaleb served as the game's art lead as well as his lead programmer and designer. However, in around 2010, McCaleb set aside his interest in gaming in favor of a passion that would shape the rest of his career. Jed got really into crypto. Now, allow me to offer some brief context about cryptocurrency. So, decentralized currency as a concept has been around for a long time. It well predates the internet. It has been especially popular among people with a deep mistrust of government regulation and big financial institutions like banks and Wall Street. As a result, it's no coincidence that some of crypto's biggest supporters are libertarians and anarcho-capitalists who believe in the supremacy of the free market over all else and feel any regulatory or government oversight of said market is tantamount to tyranny. A lot of its supporters are the all taxation is theft and the Fed and bury your gold in the backyard kind of people. And decentralized currency for a long time has attracted that kind of community. And these guys want an unchecked market where they can conduct all of their wheelings and dealings without people keeping a close eye on them. We're not going to talk too much about the ideologies of crypto, but I will also add that some of these guys who are backing this also weave webs of conspiracy proclaiming that all wealth and power is controlled by a centralized cabal of financiers who happen to be part of a specific minority group, and I think you can all connect the dots on. And I bring all this up because ideology was and still is a key driving force in the crypto community. The first calls to adapt decentralized currencies, so these are non-governmental, non-regulatory currencies, for the digital age date back to a 1983 conference paper by a computer scientist named David Chung. And over the next several decades, there were attempts to create various types of digital or web-based currency systems with names like DigiCash and eGold, all of them promising anonymous or semi-anonymous transactions outside the reach of banks or governments. However, the first one to really take off was Bitcoin. On October the 31st, 2008, one or a group of hackers under the alias Satoshi Nakamoto put out a white paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Going back to ideology, Nakamoto lamented that traditional forms of e-commerce relied upon a trust-based system that they felt left too much room for tampering and human error and and relied too heavily on regulatory oversight. In response, Nakamoto proposed what they called a cryptographic proof system, where each digital financial transaction automatically generates a unique key, and that key is then added to a digital public record of all transactions that's called a blockchain. Transactions are verified and added to the blockchain through a complex series of calculations. The person who successfully performs these calculations receives a commission for their work and also generates an instance of a specific cryptographic coin. In Nakamoto's case, it was called Bitcoin. This is a really, really oversimplified explanation of what people mean when they say they're mining for Bitcoin. That coin can then be used as a currency or as a tradable commodity. Nakamoto reasoned that an indelible public ledger would eliminate the need for outside entities such as governments and regulatory bodies to monitor financial transactions, effectively creating a self-policing system where the blockchain kept people honest and profit motives would keep people incentivized to mine more Bitcoin. Again, it's very, very much focusing on a free market-centric model. And like I mentioned a minute ago, part of the motivation behind decentralized currencies is a mistrust of financial institutions. And it's also no coincidence that Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin white paper gained popularity in the aftermath of the 2007-2008 financial crisis, when public mistrust over banking and Wall Street are pretty high. Nakamoto officially launched Bitcoin on January the 3rd, 2009. On May the 22nd, 2010, a Florida man made the first real-world Bitcoin purchase when he managed to buy $30 worth of Papa John's pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin.
Nice.
Imagine what the conversation was like with the pizza delivery person.
Wait a minute. He had 10,000 individual Bitcoins, or he had $10,000 worth of Bitcoin?
He had 10,000 Bitcoin. Now, 10,000 Bitcoin was not that much in those days.
Oh, yeah, because today that would be worth, you just said that a Bitcoin is worth $20,000.
Yeah, so 10,000 times 20,000. It's $200 million.
Ooh.
Hey, he's kicking himself now.
In those days, it wasn't worth anything. So he managed to convince this guy to take 10,000 Bitcoin for $30 worth of pizza.
That's astonishing. He spent all that money on pizza.
Wait, but I guess really though, what it means is he said, "Hey, pizza delivery guy, why don't you pay Papa John's the $30 for this pizza? And I'll give you this, and it's worth whatever you can convince somebody else to buy it from you."
Yeah, it's more like a promissory note at that point. It's like, I'm giving you this piece of paper, and I'm telling you this is worth the equivalent amount of pizza you've given me. That same year, Bitcoin first became available as a tradable commodity where people traded the currency for its perceived value in real-world currency. In 2011, Bitcoin's value reached $1 for the first time. And over the next several years, Bitcoin went through numerous cycles of boom and bust, where its value would suddenly climb, attracting mainstream press attention and drawing more people into the Bitcoin trading scene, thus increasing the speculative bubble, only for its value to tank and the cycle to repeat again. So, for example, in late 2017, its value shot up to a peak of $20,000. So one Bitcoin was worth $20,000. After a sharp decline in 2018, it began an even bigger spike in late 2020, eventually reaching its peak on November the 7th, 2021, when it was worth just under $69,000. The Bitcoin market also inspired a host of crypto competitors with their own coins with names like Cardano, Tether, XRP, and Dogecoin. Its biggest competitor, the Ethereum blockchain, launched on July the 30th, 2015. Crypto supporters put out a bunch of reasons why they're into the likes of Bitcoin. They argued the blockchain limits the need for regulatory bodies like the Securities and Exchanges Commission and the Federal Reserve. Some argue it's more egalitarian because a digital wallet for your Bitcoin eliminates the need for banks. Some also argue that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are inflation-proof because there's only a finite amount of any coin. Apparently, Nakamoto said there was only going to be a certain amount of Bitcoin. That's clearly not the case anymore. And still others love that they're unregulated, so you don't have to worry about big mean governments keeping an eye on your drug purchases. Its most ardent supporters even see Bitcoin as an eventual replacement for what are known as fiat currencies like the dollar and the euro. So those are currencies that are backed by governments. From the research I've done, I kind of see three issues holding cryptocurrencies back in the long term, especially as a replacement for fiat currencies. And the first is, at least at this recording, crypto values are extremely volatile. So while crypto supporters like to say that decentralized currencies have a wide variety of applications, it seems to me the most common use case right now is a speculative trading based on a given coin's perceived value. So as a result, their values fluctuate wildly with these numerous chaotic cycles of boom and bust. And I'm no economist, but I think you generally want to buy things using currency that's for the most part stable and consistent. Otherwise, it's like going to the grocery store in the morning to buy a loaf of bread for $2, only to go back in the evening and see the same loaf of bread now selling for $2,000. That isn't to say that trading is the only thing people use cryptocurrencies for. It shouldn't come as a surprise that some people view an unregulated, unmonitored currency as well suited for crimes. For example, Bitcoin has become a common method of payment in ransomware attacks, where a hacker steals someone's data and holds it hostage until the victim pays them to get it back.
Super.
It's like perusing my junk folder, particularly my work junk folder. I'll occasionally come across fake ransomware attacks where a scammer claims to have stolen confidential files or hacked into my webcam, and 100 times out of 100, it's weird sex stuff they claim is there. And anytime I get one of these, they always demand payment in Bitcoin. But what's funny about that is that they're also clearly aware that the average person doesn't know the first thing about Bitcoin, which leads them to mapping out a detailed list of steps of how to set up a digital wallet, buy Bitcoin on the open market, and then transfer said Bitcoin to the scammer. And I just find it so funny that this means that now there are entire cadres of these ransomware scammers who are putting together these detailed instructional courses just so people can pay them for their scams.
Yeah, please see the following screenshots in order to assist you with setting up your digital wallet.
Like customer service for ransomware.
That does sound like a good Saturday Night Live sketch where somebody's being held hostage and they're about to proxy a deal, but the hostage taker has to like download Venmo to their phone. And that's what's holding everything up.
Also, I'm no expert in the procurement or the distribution of narcotics, but I think cash would be an easier way to make an untraceable payment rather than like something like Bitcoin or Dogecoin, since crypto transactions end up stored in an unalterable record that anyone can see.
But that said, we assure our listeners that Scandalcoin is much more secure and the government will never be able to track your purchases.
Airtight.
Kevin, so I have a question. We're talking about crypto, we're talking about NFTs, and we're talking about video games. Like, how do all of these things go together?
I'm glad you asked. So skipping ahead, eventually people start looking at how lucrative crypto markets are, when they are lucrative, and start seeing how they could gamify them and start developing games that are specifically designed around earning crypto. There's a whole genre that we're going to talk about today called play to earn games, and they're built around crypto and they're built around blockchains.
Okay, because when I was trying to think of NFTs or crypto in games, it's like, is the game creating crypto, or am I wielding a crypto and Andy's wielding a crypto and like we fight with the crypto and then, I don't know, I get Andy's crypto afterwards? Also, can you wield a crypto like a sword?
PDE games are primarily NFT games. So you buy an NFT and you either do stuff with that NFT or you just trade it through the game. So the second issue I see holding cryptocurrencies back is, in addition to its wild fluctuations in value and use in crimes and all that, is they have real scalability and sustainability problems. On the technical side, blockchains in their current state can't handle large volumes of transactions, which seems like a big problem if you're touting them as a replacement for more established financial institutions. For example, the Bitcoin blockchain can handle about 4.6 transactions per second. The Ethereum blockchain can handle somewhere between 15 and 20. By comparison, Visa can handle 1,600 a second, and PayPal can handle around 190. And that's kind of the upper bound for those blockchains. Like, there's some people online who are claiming that the Ethereum blockchain will eventually be able to allow 100,000 transactions a second. But a lot of what I'm reading says we got to figure out some sci-fi shit for you. Like, we have to invent quantum computing before we can up the Ethereum blockchain's transaction numbers to those levels. Like, it's a level of technology that just doesn't exist.
So, Kevin, that's kind of helpful for you to say, because when I go to these exchanges to get like NFL digital trading card NFTs, the process takes forever. And I didn't really understand where the holdup was. And I guess I can assume now, based on what you said, it's just access to the network to log that transaction happened.
Pretty much. And that's if things are operating as normal. Let's imagine if all of a sudden people start trying to do tons of transactions in a very short amount of time. And that is something in the writing business we call foreshadowing. Also, on top of that, crypto mining is extremely resource intensive on an environmental standpoint. For example, a May the 4th, 2022 article put out by Columbia University's Climate School observed that Bitcoin mining consumes approximately 150 terawatt hours hours of electricity a year, which is a higher annual electricity expenditure than the entire country of Argentina, and it generates more carbon dioxide emissions than the entire country of Greece, which has then led some critics to point out the ways that mining for these digital funny monies helps accelerate the effects of climate change, which we're not going to talk about in a huge amount of detail, but I feel like they're really worth mentioning how energy intensive these are.
Wait a minute, hold on. Kevin, why are we going to need the Earth when crypto is going to send us to the moon?
And I can promise you that Scandal Coin will be so lucrative that we will no longer need planets or, physical bodies. We just need the capacity to send me a wire transfer of $45 million. Yes, the value keeps going up. It's just that valuable.
And we promise our listeners, every Scandal Coin bought, we will go out and personally burn down 3,000 trees.
The third issue I see holding back crypto is that because cryptocurrencies are decentralized by design and not monitored by governmental or regulatory bodies, there are no consumer protections in place if something goes wrong. If the exchange you're using gets hacked and you lose all your Bitcoin, that money's gone. There's no way to get it back. If your wallet key gets stolen and thieves make off with all your Bitcoin, that money is gone and there's no way to get it back. If you enter the wrong key to make the transaction, that money is gone. If you fund a project, say a blockchain-based game, and the guys making it just decide to fuck off with all of your Bitcoin, that money's gone and there's no way to get it back. And that, again, is some foreshadowing. On top of that, even when people in charge of, let's say, a crypto exchange face an issue like a massive data breach where hackers make off with a bunch of money, they often respond in ways that in more traditional financial institutions like a stock exchange or a bank would be considered illegal. And more on that in a little bit. And all of that brings us back to Jed McCaleb. In 2009, he turned over management of the Far Wilds to a group of the game's fans and set to work developing a website for trading Bitcoin. In July of 2010, McCaleb rebranded his one-time Magic the Gathering online exchange site / flash game homepage to a Bitcoin exchange he called Mt. Gox. Reportedly, he used the name because his then girlfriend liked the sound of it. Now, Mt. Gox was a slapdash operation, both technically and legally. The way it originally ran was Jed had people move cash in Bitcoin through his personal PayPal account, which aside from sounding really shady is something PayPal frowns upon. However, it also ended up being very popular in the crypto scene, and the site was quickly overrun with transactions. In 2011, between the high trading volume and PayPal breathing down his neck, Jed decided to get out of the Bitcoin exchange business. And in February 2011, he transferred ownership of Mt. Gox to Mark Karpeles, a French programmer living in Japan. Reportedly, Jed gave it to Mark in exchange for the first 6 months of profits. So the way an exchange works is they facilitate the exchange and they take a certain percentage of that exchange as a commission. So they're taking always a certain percentage out of every transaction that happens on it. However, according to David Gerard, author of the really good book, Attack of the 50-Foot Blockchain, the two of them hashed out the deal without any lawyers, leading to some, let's say, suspicious provisions, such as, quote, the seller is uncertain if MtGox.com is compliant or not with any applicable U.S. code or statute or any law of any country, end quote. So that's encouraging. I should also say that Jed made sure that Mark knew that he took no responsibility if things went wrong or if Mark got arrested or any kind of legal thing.
Yeah, it's like, when you go to buy a car, the dealer's like, now, I can't promise you this isn't actually just a bomb on wheels. These are just the risks we take when making a purchase.
Oh, I see you've also bought a Dodge before, Andy.
Hi-yo!
Karpeles quickly learned that an exchange hastily slapped together in PHP and run through some dude's PayPal was not the most secure site. 3 months after the sale, he learned about $62,400 worth of Bitcoin that was supposed to be there was just fucking gone, to which Jed reportedly told him, quote, maybe you don't really need to worry about it, end quote.
Wow.
Soup's encouraging. On top of some money just straight up vanishing, Mt. Gox suffered its first major hack in early June 2011, when hackers broke into Mt. Gox and changed the value of Bitcoin on the exchange from $17.50 to a single penny, which they started buying up and funneling into stolen wallet accounts. Mark announced the hack on June the 19th, froze transactions, and restored Bitcoin to its original value, attracting praise from the community for his decisive action. Over the next several years, as the price price of Bitcoin boomed, Mt. Gox became a key focal point in the crypto sphere. By 2013, Mt. Gox handled between 70 and 80% of all Bitcoin transactions, and it managed over $3 billion in exchanges. However, there was one problem. They didn't fix the security problems, and money continued to bleed out of the exchange. Mark Karpelès, whose expertise in financial management rivaled Jed McCaleb's in non-existence, responded by using money put in by new exchange customers to cover the losses to existing ones, a process known in the financial world as a Ponzi scheme.
Whoa, that back then just people didn't know. It was a more innocent time.
I'm learning a lot about Bitcoin and I had no idea what's going on, man.
On top of this, Mt. Gox was also battling the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, who were just being buzz killers and not just letting some dudes who either didn't know or didn't care about the legality of what they're doing run the world's biggest Bitcoin exchange. And in the summer of 2013, the government seized several Mt. Gox accounts valued around $5 million for illegally running a financial exchange. Fast forward to February 2014, and Mt. Gox announced it had been hacked again. This time, it lost 744,000 Bitcoins, equivalent to $350 million at the time, in people's money in the exchange, as well as an additional 100,000 Bitcoins from the company itself, in what was then the largest Bitcoin heist ever.
So question, and maybe you don't have an answer to this, or maybe you have a perfectly good answer to this that I will not understand. But if there's some kind of like exchange and, this money is digital, should it be easy to track down the money? Can't you just do like a big find on every computer in the world and just type in that $350 million worth of Bitcoin and hit five, and then it goes to people's wallets and it's here.
So Bitcoin can be held in kind of one of two wallets. They're called hot wallets and cold wallets. A hot wallet is when it's active on the exchange. You could also put what's called a cold wallet, which is basically where it's offline, it's inaccessible. Now, the other thing about this is that eventually they start trying to track down some of this money. They think that some of it got filtered through another Bitcoin exchange and then laundered out into the open market, or there was money laundering shit going on with this. There's layers for this one.
I see. So very basically, based on what you said, if there's a cold wallet with enough money in it, you could use that for the laundering. You could just take the money you stole, put it in the cold wallet, and then just transfer all of that cold wallet money out, and no one's the wiser.
All of this got people looking more closely into what the hell was going on at Mt. Gox. And in April 2015, a Bitcoin security group called WizSec put out a damning report about the state of the exchange, concluding that, to put it mildly, the exchange had been less than forthright about how much money it actually had over the past 3 years. Quote, "What appears to have happened is that as early as August 2011, we are seeing a small discrepancy between expected holdings and actual holdings, which by the end of that year has rapidly grown to several 100,000 Bitcoin. Furthermore, it appears to keep growing over time until by the middle of 2013, there are practically no spendable Bitcoins left at all in Mt. Gox. Even with the lower, more manageable Bitcoin prices back in the day, a Bitcoin shortage of this magnitude would have cost millions of dollars to cover. Barring any major hidden fiat or Bitcoin reserves, the all but inescapable conclusion is that, knowingly or not, Mt. Gox was technically insolvent since at least 2012.
Move fast and break things sometimes means you break the bank.
Oh, on top of that, investigators also learned that Mark Karpelès was probably not the best guy to be handling that much money, and not just for the reasons that in hindsight must seem glaringly obvious. As it turns out, he also had a history of computer crimes. This included being arrested twice for computer fraud-related charges in 2006, and getting convicted in absentia in France in 2010 for additional computer fraud-related charges, for which he was fined 45,000 euros and sentenced to a year in jail. Needless to say, Mt. Gox filed for bankruptcy soon after the hack and has been the subject of lawsuits and criminal investigations ever since. 200,000 of the lost Bitcoin were eventually found in a cold wallet. However, as of this recording, the rest of the lost Bitcoin was never seen again. And going back to Jed McCaleb, you might be curious what he thought about all this stuff. He denied any responsibility for the state of Mt. Gox, and he placed all the blame on Karpelès. But don't you worry about Jed McCaleb. He spent the last few years hawking several different new cryptocurrencies, which I didn't have the interest in looking into more of. And he seems to have come out okay. So don't worry about yet. And this goes back to your question before, Phil. All this talk of anarcho-capitalists and Ponzi schemes and Magic the Gathering exchange sites, you might be rightfully asking, what does any of this have to do with video games? Well, with the rising value of Bitcoin, some people got to thinking how they could use the awesome power of games to make themselves a whole bunch of decentralized digital cash. Never mind the times when the market collapses or the exchanges get hacked or you lose all your Bitcoin. That's negative thinking. It's what people in the crypto community call spreading FUD, which is short for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And we got no time for that here, especially with this exciting opportunity that is Scandal Coin, which I have just heard now is $60 million.
Whoa, folks, you've got to move on this.
It's going up and up and up. I'm buying more.
I am also buying more if this thing, it exists, right? Right, guys?
In any case, this booming market that will never stop booming and suffers from absolutely nothing problematic got people trying to find ways to integrate blockchain elements into video games. And so for the rest of the episode, we're going to examine a relatively new genre of games that come out of this called play to earn, or P2E games. Also known as blockchain games, these are games that use blockchain elements as core gameplay components. However, to understand blockchain games, I need to introduce you to another important buzzword to come out of the crypto market: NFTs. So an NFT is short for non-fungible token. And what that means is, so digital assets like a clip of AJ Brown making a sick touchdown catch, like a GIF, like a JPEG, like a sound file, are considered fungible. That is, they're interchangeable things. So you see like an image you like on the internet, you download it, and every one of those is identical. There's nothing distinguishing any instances of that image. And with that, there's no way to tell who owns the rights to that digital asset just by having one. So like me getting like a JPEG of an image doesn't mean that I own the rights to it. And if I got it off the internet, like millions of people could have that thing. NFTs, however, are a unique reference to the blockchain. They're a unique instance, so they're non-fungible. And what that means is they can't be broken up into separate instances like those JPEGs can. It's a unique reference to the blockchain, which registers what it is, how many are officially produced, and its specific ownership history. So it's effectively like a URL, like it's a reference to the blockchain. Now that reference may be attached to a thing like a JPEG, a GIF, or a sound file. However, the token itself is the reference. So using that AJ Brown sick touchdown catch as an example, like Phil, him having that NFT of it does not mean he owns the rights to that clip. That's most likely the NFL owns that. So he couldn't say reproduce that and like put it on YouTube without getting into trouble. We couldn't put it on t-shirts. So we don't own the rights to that image, but you do own the reference that that image is attached to. So it's best to think of an NFT as a reference to a URL that happens to have some kind of file attached to it. And I made a gaming analogy of this. Imagine going into a Best Buy and buying a copy of Metroid Dread for the Switch. And when you buy it, you get a receipt, and that receipt is proof you bought it. Now, buying that copy of Metroid Dread doesn't mean you own the Metroid Dread IP. So you can't legally make and sell copies of it without, getting Nintendo's lawyers involved. However, you can sell your receipt, which is effectively your proof of purchase referencing that game you bought, to somebody else if you can convince them that owning that piece of paper is worth something. The receipt is our NFT in this analogy, because there's the rub. You need to convince people that it's worth paying money for. So let's assume for a second that I paid $60 for Metroid Dread. Now, if I was really into making a bunch of money, I may convince someone like Phil. We'll say I convinced Phil to buy that Metroid Dread receipt for me for more than I paid for.
I would like to buy your Metroid Dread.
My asking price is $120.
Take my money.
So we'll say you bought it for $120. And then I tell you that I want to buy it back from you for $240.
Wait, for real? Sure, sold.
And then you and I, we go back and forth like that, buying and selling that same receipt between the two of us for double the amount each time. And all the while we're doing this, each transaction of this is being kept on an indelible public record like the Ethereum blockchain. So maybe eventually we get the sales value high enough between the two of us that the mainstream media picks up the astonishing story of someone paying $6,000 for a sales receipt. And then maybe someone reads that story and looks at the sales record and says to themselves, wow, this receipt keeps doubling in value every time it's resold. If I buy this and I put it on the market, I'll stand to make more than I paid for. So the rube, shrewd business person, buys the receipt from me from, let's say, $12,000 and puts it up for auction for $24,000, hoping for a big payout. But no one comes to buy it for that because all the while I've been artificially inflating its value so I could convince some putz to pay me 200 times what I paid for a useless piece of paper. That's basically the NFT market.
This is interesting because when it comes to the stock market, don't we have people that watch for that kind of thing in the stock market.
And in stock markets, it's happened. It happened in the comic book market in the 1990s. It's happening in the video game market right now. We may do the Wada Games scandal at some point, and the video game retro collecting scene, which is having a similar instance where there are people who are saying that, like, remember, was it last year there was that story about that sealed copy of Super Mario 64 selling for over $1 million? A guy tracked it down. The video is amazing. This guy did some really great journalism. That was bought by a guy who basically, it seems like, I'm not making accusations, it seems like what he did is he arranged a whole bunch of dummy sales to pump its value up to the point that someone in on the scam bought it for that amount of money, which got the press interested in it, which then bumped the retro game scene. And every other game like that, its value immediately shot up. If we were to skip this to the end, eventually what happens when those guys who are artificially inflating the market leave, it tanks. That's got a name in finance. It's called a pump and dump.
Or to go back to your Metroid Dread analogy, we could go ahead and call it a screw attack.
On a semi-related note, on March the 22nd, 2021, an Iranian crypto entrepreneur named Sina Estabi bought an NFT of Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey's first tweet for $2.9 million. The obscene amount of money put forward for owning this Metroid Dread receipt, I mean important piece of internet history, attracted tons of mainstream press attention. It also convinced some people that NFTs are worth something, and they became another part of the crypto speculative market, which could be bought and sold based on their perceived value. Incidentally, on April the 6th, 2022, Estavi announced that he had put the tweet NFT back up for auction with an asking price of $48 million, which, if you're doing the math, is about 16 and a half times what he paid for it, promising he would donate half the earnings of the sale to charity. So he's all heart, Sina Estavi. Anybody want to guess what the best offer Estavi got?
$1,000.
20,000.
I'm totally not going to guess.
According to an April the 13th, 2022 CoinDesk report, a week out from the auction, the best offer he received was for about $277. Not million, not thousand, $277. As of this recording, it still hasn't sold, and the best current offer is for a little less than $1,600. Now, I wasn't a math major, but that number sounds a lot lower than $48 million or $2.9 million for that matter. With all that in mind, let's go back to PDE games. Now, as far as I can tell, all play-to-earn games follow a similar model. First, a developer creates and markets a line of NFTs, the sale of which effectively acts as a crowdfunding campaign, where the developers use the funds raised in this sale to finance the development and maintenance of the game. Gameplay focuses on buying, selling, and trading NFTs, and the NFTs can be a wide variety of themes. It kind of doesn't matter what the theme is, because the principle remains the same through all of them. Now, some also try to integrate light RPG elements like battling and leveling up, and players also sometimes have the ability to use existing NFTs to generate new ones, which they can then also buy, sell, and trade, and do other in-game elements if they're there. And players earn crypto, the currency depends on the game, through buying and selling or participating in in-game events, and the developers earn money by taking a percentage for each transaction, so they act as an exchange, and they also take a percentage on the resale of any NFTs they minted. So this was something I was curious about for a while. I never understood the secondary market for NFTs. So what happens is the person who originally creates the NFT, the person who mints it, every time that is resold, they take a commission on the sale. In a lot of these games, it seems like the going rate is 4.5%.
Wow, that's significant.
So Best Buy keeps making money every time you and Phil have sold that Metroid Dread receipt to each other. So yeah,
if we were to take this analogy to its logical conclusion, they've made 4.5% on every time we've done this. So I got a thank you letter from the Best Buy Corporation. No offers, though, for our Scandal coin, which is now $70 million.
So with the AJ Brown NFT of his sick touchdown, so since it's like an NFL all-day thing, every time that's sold, the NFL gets a cut of that sale.
I don't know what their deal is with the developers, so they'll probably get their cut and the developers will get their cut too.
Oh, okay. That's helpful.
But yeah, so that's how they make money on these things. They keep a percentage of every transaction on top of the fact that they're facilitating the exchange too, and they get a percentage of that too. I can't say for sure what the first PDE game was or the first game to use PDE or blockchain elements. I can definitely tell you which one was the most influential PDE game, and that game was Crypto Kitties. Has anybody heard of Crypto Kitties?
Is this where you own NFTs of cats and you can breed them to then make a new NFT cat? I don't know to what end, but
Yeah, that's it, actually. Let me bring up an image so you can see what they look like.
yeah, I was expecting that they would be cute pictures of cats.
Yeah, I'm looking at these illustrations and I'm thinking this couldn't have made very much money.
It'll look great. So, CryptoKitties was published in 2017 by Axiom Zen, which is a blockchain based venture capital firm located in Vancouver, which eventually spun the game off to Dapper Labs, a game company that they created specifically devoted to blockchain games. And this is going to tie things together, Phil, because these days Dapper Labs does a lot of professional sports tie in NFT games like NBA Top Shot, UFC Strike, and NFL All Day.
That's right. I have a Dapper Labs wallet, and if I want to buy an NFT, I have to load money into that wallet.
I've heard CryptoKitties described as, in one article, quote, conceptually somewhere between Neopets and futures trading. The game itself involved NFTs of poorly drawn cartoon cats, and it ran on the Ethereum blockchain. Axiom then minted an initial line of kitties, which players could buy using Ether, and then they could buy, sell, rent, and trade them. Each kitty had a unique set of traits of varying degrees of rarity. Players could also breed kitties, either ones they owned or ones that they rented from other players, to try to get kitties with even rarer and therefore more valuable traits, which they could then auction off in hopes of a huge payout. And Axiom Zen and then later Dapper Labs acted as a middleman, facilitating a site for transactions and taking a commission on every exchange. This is on top of the percentage of sales they got on the minted NFTs. And on top of that, players in these transactions in the breeding also had to pay what were called gas fees. And so gas fees are the cost of a crypto miner handling the computations necessary to generate the Ether for the transaction. The game officially launched on November the 23rd, 2017. Now, trading was initially slow. However, beginning on December the 2nd, CryptoKitties suddenly became a phenomenon. At one point, the game had over 6,600 active users and handled over $2.7 million in transactions. On December the 4th, the game attracted headlines when, stop me if you've heard this one, one kitty called Genesis sold for $117,712.12, further fueling the gold rush as players flooded in to potentially make their fortune off poorly drawn cats. And here's where some of the issues facing cryptocurrencies I mentioned a little while ago start coming into play, specifically crypto's scalability problem. Because the mad dash for kitties was so intense, it practically ground the Ethereum blockchain to a halt. Following the game's launch, Ethereum transactions increased six-fold. And at one point, CryptoKitties alone accounted for 12% of all transactions on the Ethereum blockchain. So you remember I said, like, if all of a sudden there's a big rush on it, those delays are bigger, this is one of those instances where that happens. So with this sudden surge to the tune that someone made over $117,000 selling a URL attached to a cat drawing, let's step back for a minute and we'll put on our financial prognostication hats and predict what happens next. Do you think CryptoKitties kept going up and up and up to the moon? And if it didn't, do we want to guess how long the good times lasted for CryptoKitties?
I'm thinking it didn't last nearly as long as Beanie Babies.
My cynical mind and heart says that less than 6 months after it got that media attention and lay people started flocking to it.
I'm going to guess that the day after somebody bought that thing is the day the whole thing crashed.
I think that's a good guess.
One of you is pretty close. So a pair of researchers named Xinjiang Zhang and Xiaofan Liu published a study in the March the 3rd, 2021 edition of the online journal Frontiers in Physics, where they monitored transaction and user data for CryptoKitties from its launch on November 23rd, 2017, up to March the 19th of 2020. What they found was that the game had an extremely short shelf life. The Beanie Babies comparison is very apt, Elford. According to Zhang and Liu, the game's transaction surge began on December the 2nd, 2017, and reached its peak on December the 10th, after which the transaction and user numbers completely crashed, meaning CryptoKitties was a phenomenon for a mere 8 days.
No! Really?
Whoa.
That's pretty impressive.
So yeah, it was a phenomenon for 8 days. And after that, it never recovered. By January the 15th, 2018, not even 2 months after the game's release, CryptoKitties was trading at 10% of its peak. And the number of users and transactions has been on a steady downward trajectory ever since. According to their report, 2 things doomed CryptoKitties. First, the mad scramble of users into the game resulted in a deluge of new kitties in the market as everyone bred them like crazy to put them up for auction. And here's where we get to the Econ 101 segment of the podcast. Now, class, what happens when a supply of a product, say for the sake of argument, poorly drawn cat pictures, outpaces its demand?
The prices go down. Me, ouch.
Gold stars for Andy, because yeah, that's exactly what happened. So there's suddenly way too many cats in the market, thus driving down the demand and thus tanking their value. The other thing that happened was that as the kitty transactions throttled the Ethereum blockchain, the cost of Ether went up, and as a result, the Ether miners started raising their gas fees. This then forced Axiom Zen to raise their transaction fees, and this prompted some players to just cut them out entirely and start trading on the NFT exchange site OpenSea, so completely bypassing Axiom Zen. And all of this meant that in short order, the cost of investment in CryptoKitties vastly outpaced the potential earnings. And players sure as hell weren't sticking around CryptoKitties for its addictive, easy to learn, hard to master gameplay loop. They did it to make money, and the second people stopped making money, everybody bailed.
Kevin, that was really detailed. So I just want to see if I understand everything, like in terms of who's making money when that happens. So the CryptoKitties are here and somebody's going to do what you call a pump and dump, right? So we've got 5 CryptoKitties. We've got an exchange. And if we do that thing where we're bidding it up, as soon as somebody actually legitimately buys that NFT, say you and I will make money, and whoever minted the CryptoKitties NFT will make money. And then the exchange that we're doing the transaction on makes money. And then somebody who mined the Ethereum to pay for it also makes money. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what they do, if I'm understanding it correctly, is because it's going into the Ethereum blockchain, that means somebody has to do those calculations to get it on there. And so they get a commission, Dapper Labs, Axiom Zen. Their arrangement is, okay, you two, you have a kitty you want to breed. You want to trade this kitty between the two of you. You cover the gas fee for that. And then they get their cut of the sale. And they get another percentage because they initially made the NFT. Now, I don't know if in the instance of a breeding of a crypto kitty, I don't know if that means that Axiom Zen is considered the minter or if it's the person who bred it. I don't remember with that one. So I think they're hoping that they'll get the percentage on that too. But I could be wrong on that. I also don't have definitive proof that this was a pump and dump. It sounds like one, especially the fact that all of a sudden we have this big high dollar amount, like the Jack Dorsey tweet, like the Super Mario 64 sale, where we kind of have an understanding of where these things are. And all of a sudden, this big sale happens. It's just completely out of the area. And then people think, wow, all of these things are valuable. Now we jump in. And in the case of a pump and dump, it's like, it was never worth that in the first place. And what ends up happening is that people who get in early make all the money, and then everybody else, at the best they do is break even. And in most cases, they lose money. So I think it's something like that. And I think it's some people who got in early. And actually, this instance is going to influence a lot of future PDE games because everybody wants to be CryptoKitties before the crash. Let's put it that way. So these days, CryptoKitties are basically the equivalent of Beanie Babies in the crypto community. Perusing the CryptoKitties subreddit these days, the majority of the posts on there now fall into one of 2 categories. People asking whether it's worth selling their kitties now, to which the overwhelming answer is no, they're basically worthless, and complaints about the high gas fees. Nevertheless, CryptoKitties' success inspired a legion of other similar NFT-based play-to-earn games with names like Pirates of the R-Land, Galaxy Fight Club, and Chicky Chick. Because like I said, they're all chasing those first couple of days of CryptoKitties. They're not there for the end of it. And so for the remainder of the episode, I'm going to call attention to 2 other PDE games to come out in the years since CryptoKitties' 8 days of fame. The first is a game that many in the crypto community thought was the new and improved version of CryptoKitties, and that's Axie Infinity. Has anyone heard of Axie Infinity?
Maybe, but all these NFTs sound the same to me.
No, not really.
This part is the reason why I had to do 2 episodes. There's a lot coming up. Axie Infinity was developed in 2018 by Sky Mavis, which was then a 3-person development team based in Vietnam. Sky Mavis's explicit goal in developing Axie Infinity was to learn from the mistakes of CryptoKitties and create a play-to-earn game that was sustainable for longer than a fortnight. Now, design-wise, Sky Mavis drew a lot of inspiration from Pokemon. Axie Infinity revolves around these little NFT characters called Axies, and if you give me a second, I'll show you what they look like.
So, Kevin, while you're pulling that up, just a quick observation that, you know, when you see guys on the bus playing one of those games where there's something hidden under a cup and like the shell game, and they're just trying to get somebody on the bus to actually put in, like, the people who are participating are fake, like they're in cahoots with each other. They're just trying to get some like real person on the bus to put in their money so they can make off with that. That's exactly what the NFT stuff you just talked about reminds me of.
So Axie Infinity revolves around these NFT characters called Axies. Players start by buying a team of at least 3 Axies, whom they battle against other players or use to play in daily challenges to earn SLP, which is short for Smooth Love Potion, which is the game's currency. SLP can then be sold for crypto, so the actual currency you get in the game can be exchanged for cryptocurrency. So like CryptoKitties, players could buy, sell, and rent their Axies to other players. And also like CryptoKitties, players could breed them. However, unlike its predecessor, Axie Infinity set a limit on how many times a given Axie could be bred and created higher SLP costs for each successive breeding. So they don't completely stop the oversupply issue, but they kind of stretch it out. And again, the explicit goal of this game is to generate that currency, which then can be exchanged for real money. So the SLP is the goal of the game. For a while, Axie Infinity was a massive success in the blockchain gaming world. Its user base exploded in 2021, growing 173% between January and July. By August, there were over 1.8 million users, and Sky Mavis was worth about $3 billion. However, even when Axie Infinity was at its height, there was trouble on the horizon. For one thing, the sole objective of the game was to earn money. So aside from buying Axies to earn more SLP, the entire point of the game is to farm SLP and then exchange that for money. That's the entire explicit goal of this game. It's marketed, it's pushed as an earner. It's literally a play to earn. You play this game, you earn this money. And there's really nothing you can really do with SLP aside from buy more Axies, with a couple of other small exceptions. And that segues into our next Econ 101 lesson. Now, class, what happens to an economy when there's a rapidly increasing amount of currency in circulation and little to no way of removing it from circulation? I see Phil's got his hand raised. What do you think?
Deflation.
I was going to say disaster.
I gotta give the credit there to Elford. He is correct. If you say runaway inflation, then yes, gold stars for you. Because as more and more people joined and farmed increasingly more SLP, its value decreased due to oversupply. Because again, the whole point is to take the SLP and put it in the market. So as a result, the more and more SLP is diluting its value. And so as a result of that, people have to then work harder farming more of it just to hope to break even. And again, remember, people had to pay to join Axie Infinity. They had to buy those 3 Axies, and at its peak, that initial Axie purchase could be as much as $1,000. On top of that, the longevity of the game was contingent on a constant stream of new players coming in and buying more Axies from existing players to keep the game's economy going. So it was reliant on a constant stream of growth. Now, no financial expert, but that doesn't sound like a good idea. Like, it's not really a great plan to develop a game that's built on infinite growth. And there were even crypto supporters who started pointing out that the game's growth was unsustainable. For example, in an August the 10th, 2021 article for Medium. Again, contextually, that's around near its height. One crypto advocate observed Axie Infinity's reliance on a steady stream of new players to ensure existing players can make money sounded awful lot like a pyramid scheme, and predicted it was only a matter of time before the game's economy collapsed. Quote, the definition of a pyramid scheme is that each layer makes money as long as there are more layers coming in at the right pace. Each pyramid scheme sounds great and looks indistinguishable from a legitimate high-growth business on the surface as long as it lasts. But each pyramid scheme eventually reaches saturation when new layers are unable to make a profit anymore by recruiting even more layers, which is when the whole scheme topples. As things currently stand, this fate is inevitable for Axie. It's hard to predict when the collapse will happen, as crypto and meme stock bubbles have proven to be able to go on for longer than expected. But nevertheless, there are only so many daily players it can reach until all of the world's population drop what we're currently doing and start playing Axie full time in about 13 months' time. Seems unlikely to me, even though this would be one of the most ironic apocalyptic scenarios imaginable, end quote. So even people who are into crypto saying it's gonna crash eventually.
So can I bring in like a slightly different analogy related to airline miles?
By all means.
So I watched one of those Wendover Productions videos that stated that like the actual value of airlines is not on the flights, but actually the frequent flyer miles, because frequent flyer miles can be earned and exchanged in so many different places that they're actually a form of currency that is not subject to all of the same tax laws as regular currencies. So if you look at the value of the airlines, they're low. But if you look at the value of the frequent flyer programs, they're each worth like 10 to 20 billion dollars. And I thought that was weird. But what makes sense is, so what's the commodity that's driving the value? We're all always going to need to fly somewhere. We're always going to be taking flights across the country. So there's an actual commodity there that's driving this currency. In the whole NFT sphere, even though I own a sick NFT that one day will definitely be worth something, I still don't know where's the commodity. Like, where's the actual value that's going to keep driving all this stuff going forward? I don't know.
FOMO.
Yeah, I think so. People get excited about the NFT market. People say it's exciting, and then other people get into it, and it cycles that. And it only lasts so long before the bubble bursts. It's like, again, to use another analogy, it's like it's Wile E. Coyote just running off the cliff, and he runs at a cliff and he keeps running. And it's like, I wonder if some of these guys, like, as long as I don't look down, as long as I don't think that this is losing value, it'll be okay. But like, eventually you're going to realize that you're not on solid ground anymore. But let's put a pin in that talk of catastrophic economic collapse for a minute to take a closer look at Axie Infinity's player base, because this is interesting. You may be surprised to learn that most players don't fit the stereotypical model of the crypto bro. According to reports, the overwhelming majority, some cases saying between 65 and 70% of the game's players, are from Southeast Asia, with about 55% of them from the Philippines alone. Most of these players are from economically disadvantaged communities who play the game to supplement meager incomes, because we've reached that level of late-stage capitalism where some people leave their meat space jobs to log on to their virtual jobs playing with NFT Pokemon so they can earn enough money to survive another day. Now, knowing this, you might then ask yourself, how do they afford the high entry fee? Again, recall, players have to buy 3 Axies to start, and at its peak, it could have been as high as $1,000. Meanwhile, the average monthly salary in the Philippines is about $892. Well, here's where the crypto bros come in, because one person's crippling economic barrier is another's lucrative financial opportunity, and allow me to introduce you what came to be known as the manager scholar system. Managers are Axie owners who rent their Axies to scholars who do all of the SLP mining for them and then give the manager a percentage of their yield. Contracts between managers and scholars vary. Axie Infinity co-founder and COO Alexander Larson told a Vice reporter in April 2022 that managers generally received anywhere between a 30 and 75% cut per scholar, and some managers had as many as 200 scholars working under them. That also sounds like a pyramid scheme.
And it also sounds like feudalism.
I know, yeah.
Except instead of land, it's these NFTs. Like, oh, sure, I will allow you to use my NFTs to make a little bit of money for yourself and also money for me.
Question: did this game collapse, or can we still buy some of these?
Hold on to that for a second. We're going to talk about that. Spoiler, yes, it does collapse.
Besides, we all know the hot new game is Scandal Ball, right?
Scandal Ball, where you can pay us for the chance to get on the ground floor with Scandal Coin, which I'm hearing now is somewhere in the range of $75 million. Keeps going up. Now, were I to meet an Axie Infinity manager, I might first ask them how they sleep at night. But my second question might be to ask them what they think they get out of this arrangement. And Vice reporter Edward Onguiso Jr. reached out to several managers to ask what they got out of people in the global south, basically paying them for the privilege to eke out poverty wages, doing virtual battles with references to pictures of digital monsters. Now, one manager who told Onguiso he at one point was earning $20K a month on this system explained he unironically felt like he was giving back. Quote, I don't portray them as employees. Our agreement on Axie is mutually beneficial. I make money from them using my NFTs, and they make money by playing them. Philanthropy is something I have never experienced in any way. Side, my God, I don't think you're experiencing that now either. The message I get from my scholars on how they have used their profit to pay bills, get a washer and dryer, or in some cases, new teeth for their grandpa is truly amazing to see, end quote.
I've never heard such a glowing appraisal of a loan shark.
Humanitarian. He's a philanthropist. He's like Andrew Carnegie over here, John D. Rockefeller. Building libraries on the back of his crypto dollars.
Is this not what we wanted, though? We wanted to deregulate, go back to the wild, wild west. Here we are.
Another manager said he felt his deal with his scholars was for them a path out of poverty and into the exciting world of cryptocurrency, explaining in his statement absolutely soggy with colonialism, quote, I also see Axie as a gateway for Filipinos to be educated about crypto, which I believe will help them advance in the future. I've set up crash courses for them about the basics of crypto, how to create wallets, trade, and how to avoid scams, basically making them literate in the crypto world, end quote. You know, as Rudyard Kipling once wrote, take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed, go send your sons to exile. And apt crypto-related reference here. God, this sucks.
Yikes.
Any other thoughts on these people? All right. Okay.
Definitely interesting, allowing most likely the middle and upper middle class of some other country to exploit the lower middle class and the working poor of their class.
I mean, I guess my observation is there's something here that works functionally. You know, this technology can get stuff done across vast distances somehow. I'm sure it could be useful for something, but like, what?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Why do we always use it for evil? Every time we use it for evil. It's like not sometimes, every time.
Every time.
But only after we've first used it for porn.
I bet you anything they're porn NFTs.
I would give you $1 million if there weren't.
So this entire system is precariously positioned on Axie Infinity remaining financially stable. If, for example, the value of the game's currency were to falter, or the growth of users fails to keep up to demand, the whole Jenga tower comes crashing down, and its player base sure as hell ain't sticking around if that happens. And here's where we get to what I mentioned a few minutes ago about catastrophic economic collapse, because by late July 2022, the value of SLP began to plunge. At one point, it was 33.55 cents on July the 22nd, and it maintained a death spiral until February 21st, 2022, when its value fell to about 9/10 of a cent. The collapse forced Sky Mavis to implement drastic changes to the game to curtail inflation and stave off financial ruin, anticipating backlash from the user base on severely limiting the amount of SLP they could earn, which is one of the things they did. The devs explained in a February 3rd, 2022 post, we know that this is painful medicine. The Axie economy requires drastic and decisive action now, or we risk total and permanent economic collapse. That would be far more painful, end quote. And if all that wasn't bad enough, it gets worse, by the way. This gets worse. On March the 23rd, 2022, this unstable pseudo-colonialist digital sharecropping game, throttled by rampant inflation whose bubble had decidedly burst, suffered one of the biggest hacks in the history of cryptocurrency. As Sky Mavis announced, hackers had made off with the crypto equivalent of about $625 million. Shout out to Phil. You shared the links to me that got me this research. I'm giving the credit to you.
Yeah, but you read the links, right? That's where the real work is.
This is wild. This is my favorite part of the story. The way they did it was as hilariously dumb as it is financially ruinous. A significant part of the hack involved the hackers reaching out to Sky Mavis employees through LinkedIn and encouraging them to apply for a job at a fictitious company set up by the hackers. The hackers put them through a rigorous hiring process, complete with interviews, culminating in an offer letter. However, the PDF in the offer letter was a phishing scheme, which contained spyware the hackers used to access a bunch of the security validators to the Ronin blockchain on which Axie Infinity ran.
Okay, I actually did read the link that I sent you now that you reminded me of the story. And one of the things I find hilarious about this is that software engineers are always looking for new jobs. So like from a social engineering standpoint, something like this is devious. That is a very like vulnerable way to destabilize an entire company.
It was also a situation, you probably know more of the technical stuff. Apparently, the Ronin blockchain was secured by, I think, like 9 security validators. By one dude clicking a PDF, they got 5 of them. Through one guy, they managed to get all of this. And like, there's so much of this in these crypto things where it's like basic level problems. Like, you can correct me on the terminology. Like, apparently one of the problems at Mt. Gox was that if a couple of people were working on code at the same time, there are safeguards in place that you won't override the main code when you're working on it. They didn't have those. And so people working on it were constantly screwing up other people's codes by working on it. And there are stories about other crypto exchanges that got hacked hacked, and the crypto exchange was built by like some 16-year-old who then sold it off to somebody and left, and no one knew how the code worked and no one could fix it. So much of that is in this community.
Okay. Well, 2 points. Number one, relax, Kevin. It's just currency. The second thing is that now that you mentioned that a 16-year-old pulled off some component of this, I'm starting to suspect, did you actually create Scandal Coin? Are we all getting a Scandal Coin at the end of this podcast?
I actually have some really bad news because while we were talking, Scandal Coin got hacked. And now all of our Scandal Coin values are worth 9/10 of a cent.
No.
Oh, no. No. I put my kids' college savings in there.
Oh my God.
You dummies. I bailed on Scandal Coin after the third time I shilled for it.
I can't foresee how this would have happened. The code was put together by my 5-year-old nephew. I thought it was a sure thing. So the U.S. Treasury Department identified the culprits as the Lazarus Group and APT-38, which is a pair of hacker groups based in North Korea. Incidentally, in recent years, crypto-related hacking has become an increasingly popular way for the North Korean government to generate revenue and circumvent international sanctions. On that note, if you'll pardon another brief digression, in 2019, U.S. authorities arrested an Ethereum Foundation employee named Virgil Griffith. The Ethereum Foundation are one of the dev groups that is responsible for the Ethereum blockchain. According to a November 21st, 2019 report filed by the Southern District of New York, in April 19th, Griffith illegally traveled to Pyongyang to attend a cryptocurrency conference where, quote, Griffith and other attendees discussed how blockchain and cryptocurrency technology could be used by the DPRK to launder money and evade sanctions, and how the DPRK could use these technologies to achieve independence from the global banking system, end quote. And on April the 20th...
It must have been cool hanging out with Dennis Rodman.
Keynote address by Dennis Rodman, I hope. In April 2022, Griffith pled guilty to conspiring to violate the U.S. International Emergency Economic Power Act, for which he was fined $100,000 and sentenced to 5 years in prison.
Well, it sounds like these hackers might have actually been inspired, at least in their theft of Axie-related stuff, by Team Rocket. That's a Pokemon reference, Phil. They're the bad guys who are always trying to steal other people's Pokemon. Parents, okay. Ask your kids.
Going back to the hack, if you thought the February collapse was bad, the hack made things even worse for Axie Infinity. By the end of July, SLP was basically worthless. It valued at 0.4 of a penny, a 99% fall from its 2021 height.
Wow.
As of this recording, its value is now close to 0.3 of a penny. There's also more to this story. Like I said, this is the reason why this is 2 episodes. You remember how I mentioned a while back that one of the issues with crypto is that when something goes wrong, say for example a hack, the people in charge end up doing things that in more closely monitored financial institutions would be considered illegal. This is where that becomes relevant. Because following the announcement of the hack, a crypto YouTuber tracked transactions coming out of Sky Mavis, because you remember all those things go on a public record, and concluded that several hours before announcing the hack, Sky Mavis CEO and co-founder Tron Wim transferred $3 million worth of AXS, which is another token of Axie Infinity, out of the Ronin blockchain and into the crypto exchange Binance. Now, were Axie Infinity a stock exchange or a publicly traded company, trading a commodity based on inside information that would dramatically affect its value would be considered insider trading.
You'd get the Martha Stewart treatment. That's exactly what I was thinking about. But, you know, again, it goes back to what we were talking about before. Crypto is functioning like an investment, being bought as an investment, but it is being talked about as if it's a currency.
You just broke my brain, Elford. It's a currency and it's being exchanged like a currency, but people are buying it as an investment.
No. So as Kevin just said, when he knew something was happening, he moved all his currency into the market so that other people could buy it, because I guess it must have been in a cold wallet, right? If this was a stock, that's illegal, and that would be major prison time, right? But since this says this is currency, but they're not selling it as currency, really. Like every time I've heard of crypto, it's been in the idea of an investment. Right. And it's functioning as an investment. Now, again, currencies are traded and there are big hedge funds that do this. But for the average person isn't going to make a whole bunch of money trading currency, or at least hedging on currency, exchanging currency. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
At least there's a little gray area.
I mean, it was built by design to be unmonitored and unregulated. So like there are literally no laws for this kind of stuff. And so like it's not illegal what Sky Mavis did, because there isn't a law for it. Like if this was a publicly traded company and say it was hacked, say they were like Visa or something like that, and they realize this happened, they hold on to that information, their CEO moves all this stuff. That is insider trading. Like they can go to prison for that, but it's not illegal in the crypto community. Again, because this whole thing was built on the idea that the free market is sovereign over all, that government governs best, that governs least. If you're a libertarian, if you're an anarcho-capitalist, government's best, that doesn't exist. And it's like Nguyen and Sky Mavis were quick to deny accusations of insider trading, asserting this explanation. My goodness. They asserted that they had to get access out of the game before its value inevitably tanked, so they could then use that money to compensate players affected by the hack. So you see, we had to get that money out because we knew that value was going to tank. We needed to get out before it happened because follow me on this, we're giving that money back. Now, this is kind of still ongoing. I didn't put this in the notes. So apparently, Sky Mavis tried to give some of the money back. However, they tried to compensate people for their amount of access / SLP on the value of it after the hack. They reimburse people on the current value of their now worthless currency. Hey guys, I don't know, but I'm beginning to think that cryptocurrency seems to attract a lot of unsavory characters. And speaking of it, why don't we wrap up by talking about Evolved Apes? Anybody heard of Evolved Apes?
I've heard of Bored Ape. I haven't heard of Evolved Apes.
Evolved Apes is a little bit inspired by Bored Apes. You know, Bored Apes is that line of NFTs designed to look like shittily drawn apes. It's one of these other games riding on CryptoKitties' extremely liberal definition of success. And Evolved Apes was a P2E game that was announced in late 2021 by a person with the online handle Evil Ape, a name that, not to give too much away, will be extremely apt in a few minutes. Now, Evolved Apes had a similar premise to CryptoKitties, except instead of poorly drawn pictures of cats, it was now poorly drawn pictures of apes.
It's weird that calling them evolved apes makes me think that the picture should actually be poorly drawn pictures of humans, because humans are evolved apes, right?
That would stand to reason.
So I will say that, Axiom was going in the right direction because they got an artist that the little thingies were a little cute. This is going in the opposite direction. I'm guessing it didn't last nearly as long.
Also, like Axie Infinity, players could level up their NFT apes and battle for cryptocurrency. Although instead of a Pokemon-esque battle system, Evolved Apes was going to be a one-on-one fighter. A trailer dropped on YouTube on September the 27th, 2021, which I'm going to show you right now.
He just ran him through with that katana.
For the benefit of our listeners, we just saw two shittily designed apes. One of them designed as a ninja, and I guess one is like a stereotypical like gangster fighting each other, and the one getting run through with a katana.
And I did not find that kill to bring me much of a thrill at all.
Check out our previous episode on Thrill Kill.
Oh, that's right. It's Evolved Apes, not Evolved Jokes.
I cannot overstate that on just a pure aesthetical, it looks like garbage.
Yeah,
it looks so bad. I will include a link to the video in the description. It looks like shit. But there are some people who really like this idea. I'm going to talk about them. The team at Evolved Apes minted a line of 10,000 NFTs and put them up for sale on September the 24th, 2021, with a starting price of 0.08 Ether, which roughly at the time of the start of the sale was about $234. As with CryptoKitties, a bunch of people unsurprisingly rushed in hoping to ultimately make their fortune on these shitty looking apes. Because again, that's the message that all of these PDE games took from CryptoKitties, is that for the designers, it's like we could be the next CryptoKitties and make a shit ton of money in a short amount of time. Never mind the fact that the market will probably tank. And a bunch of people who were just crypto people and NFT people were like, if we get in on the ground floor, we get in really early, we could stand to make a shit ton of money. So a bunch of people looked at Evolved Apes and they thought that they could do that here. However, all was not well in the world of crypto-based digital ape fighting, because Evolved Apes investors were quickly dismayed to learn that following the auction, the developers started acting funny, offering cagey responses to questions about the game until they eventually went completely dark, shutting down their Twitter accounts as well as the Evolved Apes website. Concerned investors took to the game's Discord to try to get to the bottom of this, and they placed one of their own in charge of conducting an investigation, and his online handle is Mike_CryptoBull. Now, what made Mike_CryptoBull especially qualified to take on this case, you ask? Well, on the one hand, perusing his social media reveals that he's a crypto true believer. He's a bro. And his Twitter feed is absolutely lousy with calls to invest in this or that NFT project. Side note, he's also an Elon Musk stan because of course he is. On top of that, Mike was especially qualified to look into this matter on account of the fact that he had invested about $10,000 into Evolved Apes. Now, before I reveal what Mike Crypto Bull discovered, anyone want to venture a guess what you think happened?
I'm going to bet that they were never even working on a game. That it wasn't like Axie Infinity, which was, a legitimate attempt to make a game without understanding the economics that would underlie it. But that Evolved Apes, I'm guessing, was just a deliberate scam from the start.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Andy, but less articulately. They took the money and ran.
Yeah, it makes sense. You have to capture your profits within a few days or even a few minutes. Maybe they figured they'd capture their profits before they even launched the company.
On October the 1st, 2021, Mike completed his investigation and shared his findings in a PDF on the Evolved Apes Discord, concluding what we were able to deduce without investing 10 grand in poorly drawn apes, that the appropriately named Evil Ape took the money and ran. He just fucked off with it. According to Mike, quote, "What has happened is that Evil Ape has washed his hands of the project, taking away the wallet with all the ether from minting that was to be used for everything, from paying the artists, paying out cash giveaways, paying for marketing, paying for rarity tools, developing the game, and everything else in between," end quote. In total, Evil Ape absconded with the Ethereum equivalent of $2.7 million in a practice that is so common in the crypto community, it has a name: a rug pull. The Evolved Apes rug pull shocked the crypto world and attracted mainstream press headlines, as will happen when someone basically sells a bunch of crypto dudes some magic beans to the tune of $2.7 million. However, for all the fun we've had at the expense of dudes like Mike Crypto Bull in this episode, I'll say this: the crypto community takes care of its own. Several community members took pity on the victims of the Evolved Apes rug pull, looked deep in their hearts, reached out a helping hand, and offered them early access for the chance to buy in on their NFT ventures.
You're not serious, really?
I wish I was making this up, man. For example, on October the 4th, 2021, so several days after they figured out what had happened, another NFT group called Political Punks, which specialized in crude drawings of celebrity headshots that looked like they were drawn in MS Paint, put out a tweet offering the victims of the Evolved Apes rug pull the chance to buy into their, quote, 200 pre-sale spots for our upcoming Gen 2 Plea Punks mint, end quote. Another group calling themselves Sneaky Vampire Syndicate made a similar offer on February the 18th, 2022. You can't say the crypto community doesn't care. But don't feel too bad for the victims of Evil Ape, because they proved determined to have their revenge, albeit in the saddest way possible. So, you know what? This is off script, but I think it's fun to do this. I'm going to give you 3 options about what they did in response to the rug pull. Did they A, actively go online, try to track down Evil Ape and reported him to the proper authorities? B, band together, become active advocates against this rampant P2E market that seems to be rife with scams? Or C, try to make their own shittily designed NFT ape game?
For once, can you please tell me it was A?
So I noticed that murder isn't one of the options. So option B was they are going to band together and they're going to campaign against these types of companies, right?
Yeah, and basically against this whole NFT market the way it is right now.
I think after suffering something so horrific, that seems reasonable that they would have banded together to try to educate other people and prevent other people from getting sucked into this type of bad investment.
What do you think, Andy?
Well, I sort of worry that this is not the kind of show where people learn their lessons. But like Phil, I'm rooting for mob justice.
Now, longtime listeners of this show will know that whenever I offer the three choices, the answer is always C. Several of the people bilked by the Evolved Apes rug pull responded basically by saying, you grifted me, and I want in on the grift. And on October the 2nd, 2021, a group of these poor suckers announced that, you know what? We're going to make that shitty ape-themed game anyway. And they launched it, now calling it Fight Back Apes. Aside from adopting the exact same model as Evolved Apes, buy NFTs of poorly drawn apes and battle them to earn crypto, they also developed some lore for the game inspired by actual events. The game takes place in a dystopian future where different types of shittily drawn apes are separated into various working castes. They are kept in line due to the machinations of an evil, multinational corporation under the rule of its malevolent CEO, Albert Al the Ape, aka Evil Ape, the name of the dude who took all of their money.
Justice is served.
All right. First of all, this plot is nowhere near convoluted enough for like a true fighting game plot, I feel like.
I mean, if I'm Evil Ape and I'm sitting on my little island and I'm surfing around the internet and I see this game and I play it long enough to see that the bad guy's named Evil Ape, like I might have a little bit of a laugh before I stop paying attention. So I'm wondering, like, did a lot of people play this game? Was it worth putting the time into it to get the little revenge, you know?
I'll get to that in a second, but you reminded me of something. So something a bunch of the articles pointed out with the rug pull is that, again, the way these NFT games work is that the person who initially mints the NFT gets a commission on every resale. Now, I don't know if people ended up selling their Evolved Apes, but a bunch of the articles that talked about the rug pull pointed out that if they did, it meant that Evil Ape would still get more money because he minted the NFTs. He would get 4.5% every time he sold it. So it's like, not only did he steal their first investment, he's stolen every subsequent investment in Evolved Apes. If someone's dumb enough to sell it, they're going to give him more money. But let's talk about Fight Back Apes. As of this recording, perusing their website, they have mapped out no concrete plans for this so-called game. No developers, no screenshots, no technical discussions, no timetable for release. However, you'll be happy to know they do have a detailed plan for minting and marketing their line of NFTs. Priorities, people, they covered the important stuff first. Their social media content consists almost exclusively of bland platitudes to fight back and announcements of new NFT mintings of more of these terribly designed apes. I put their release date somewhere after we finally nuke ourselves into extinction, allowing the apes to take over, so maybe around 2027. All of this is to say, I'm not trying to make broad sweeping generalizations about the crypto community and their relationship to gaming, but from an outsider's perspective, it seems like the people in positions of power are woefully unprepared to manage large-scale operations, incapable or unwilling to develop the secure systems necessary to run them, or are outright grifters and con artists, or possibly a combination of all three. And keeping that all in mind, next time, we'll talk about how the mainstream games industry looked at this complete shit show, by which I mean exciting money-making opportunity, and tried to see how they could get their own piece of the crypto pie. But before we do that, final thoughts.
Very interesting.
Yeah, Kevin, I want to give kudos to you. Like, I mean, every episode highlights something neat historically, but I feel like this episode, I hope, educates some people and, you know, maybe makes one or two people reconsider a possible unwise investment.
Yes, you've taken us in another direction, learning a little bit about economics, a little bit about money and investment. And you've also exposed me to something I was completely unaware of. I had no idea that these type of games existed and their relationship to Bitcoin. And I learned more about Bitcoin today than I learned over the years, grifting little pieces of information here and there. I am very, very curious about how mainstream gaming has tried to apply this to it. So I'm definitely looking forward to this next episode.
Question. Are we getting scandal coins or not? Come on.
They're
It's the end of
worthless
the
now.
episode.
We got hacked.
Oh.
And actually, I will tell you that there's an update in this story. I managed to find an investor who could help save us from financial ruin. But he said, my name is not important, but if I were an ape, I would be evil.
Oh, no. Here we go.
I thought you were going to say that all the Scandal Coin investors will be paid back, you know, the several cents that their Scandal Coins are now worth, which I'm offering to do because, like I said, I got my Scandal Coin out early. So Kevin, Elford, Phil, let me give you each several cents
Several of the crypto community have reached out and offered to help us in our time of need by allowing us the privilege of buying their NFTs.
So, Kevin, I do have an actual observation that is really unsettling for me. When you talk about the technology behind crypto and the technology behind NFTs and how the blockchain is supposed to work, and then, there are all these mechanisms that record the transactions, and then people get paid off of that. And then if you mint an NFT, you get paid off of that. This seems like a very well thought out and complex set of infrastructure that seems incapable of providing any value whatsoever. Like, I just find, like, this is so well thought out. Like, they thought of everything. And, like, has it provided any value aside from, a Ponzi scheme? Is there any non-Ponzi scheme value being thus far provided by any of this infrastructure? I guess that's my question.
That's a great question. And again, this is being the bitter humanities major that I am, is that it often seems like you have tech guys who are out there who see it as an engineering problem where, like, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail and everything is a technical solution and you're not really thinking about the bigger ramifications. I have learned there is a kind of practical application for this, and I didn't come up with this. I listened to a really good podcast about this called Pine the Bastards, and they did a whole episode on this. That there is an instance where, like, having a situation where you have an indelible public record of alterations to a system in the coding, like GitHub. GitHub is a great example. So, like, you put code on GitHub and people can see everybody's alterations, their additions, and their modifications. And that kind of system, because everybody can see it and everybody can see when changes are made, it helps people improve the overall quality of that equipment, that system, that code. And as like a use case for a blockchain-like thing. But as for like actual use cases for this stuff that don't involve these kinds of unsustainable or quasi-illegal mechanisms, I don't know. Some of that is because of the ideology on which it was built. A lot of the underpinnings of this technology from its inception was, we want a financial system that the government can't get their oily hands on, that we don't need to deal with, intrusive regulatory apparatuses, and that it's almost like it's working as intended. It is in some respects an unmonitored, unregulated free market system. And the problem is that capitalism is going to capitalism,
Okay, I mean, that's almost definitely true about crypto in general, but relative to video games, I think there's some type of, once again, video game noob. And one of my new observations about like grinding in video games to get, items and to get currency is that I know we're playing a game, but aren't we actually working? Like, aren't we working at this? Aren't we actually producing something? So even though we're working and producing something and, I can get an item and give it to you, and that's something that you can use and it'll kind of make your life better. So like there are commodities, we're producing value. Shouldn't there be a digital way to reflect the work and the value that we're doing? So like in some way in the back of my head, I'm carrying around this concept that yes, we're all kind of working and we're all super productive sitting on our couches for hours on end playing this game. And it's like, oh yeah, clearly somebody has now figured out how to digitally, encapsulate the value that the four of us create on a nightly basis whenever we're playing co-op games together. And I think that plays somewhat into the idea that people buy into, because it's like, yeah, I create value when I spend hours doing this stuff. Clearly, it's not just wasted and going into the ether, it's going into this thing, right? And right now, and probably forever, that's clearly not true. But I think everybody might need to believe that in some way. You guys have obviously played video games much longer than I have. Do you feel like there's any truth to that?
I guess I've always looked at the value I generate by playing video games as just like the enjoyment I've had. And like, admittedly, that's such an ephemeral kind of thing. And it's something you can't like put your finger on or spend. But, the same as like, what value did I generate by reading a book? Well, hopefully that book meant something to me. That's how I've always looked at it. But I guess, maybe I'm just an old person who has never considered the idea that by playing a video game, I could also make money. Hashtag play Scandal.
I'm glad you brought that up, Phil, because one, that's a fantastic question. That line of reasoning you talked about, skipping ahead to our next episode, is a lot of the pitch for NFTs in mainstream gaming. The idea is like all that time that you spent playing Elden Ring, all that time we spent playing Monster Hunter is time we could have been making money, that we could have been earning. So on the one hand, there's that. So like guys in the crypto community will say like the grind never stops and I could monetize even my leisure time. And so some of it is that. And the other hand is that, and this is where we're going to see a lot when we talk about NFTs in the mainstream game industry is that, you know, you work hard and you get assets in games. So like you go through Ranni's quest line in Elden Ring to get the Dark Moon grade sword. You earn that thing. That is an accomplishment you have. That accomplishment should not just be restricted to the lands between. It should be something that you can own, that you can take out of this game and say theoretically bring it into a future FromSoft game. Or it's something that you could then put on the market and sell to somebody and monetarily get something out of it.
Right.
So a lot of the appeal to this type of gaming is a lot of that. You're putting all this time in, you should get something that's beyond the space of this game, that's going to live well after we shut the servers down, kind of thing. Now, whether they do that is a whole nother question, and whether any of them actually accomplish that is a whole nother question, but that is the advertising to it. So you're hitting at something that the games industry is talking about a lot with this.
Well, I look forward to exploring that topic in part 2.
It's going to be wild, man. But I'll do my final thought here, which is that blockchain games, it's like the gaming equivalent of strip mining. It's like you rush in, you've got this one commodity, and people stay as long as they can to maximize the amount of profits. They utilize that resource, whatever it is. And then the second that that's no longer profitable, they're gone. In that way, these games are the most ephemeral games ever created. Like always the joke, like about every year we get a Madden game. So after that, the Madden game before that is worthless because we get the new one every year. And it's like when you go to GameStop and like, if you were to buy like Madden 21 or Madden 20, they're probably selling it for $5 or whatever. It's always the joke is an older Madden game is worthless. There is value in those games. I'll give you an example. The NCAA football video game community is a really
discontinued that, right?
That will be a subject for a future episode, the NCAA football stuff. But that's a really active community because the last NCAA football game was NCAA 14. And because they have no other option for a football game, you have a really dedicated community of modders who like every year when the college football season starts, they put out roster updates, they put uniform updates, they put stadium updates. If a school jumps from 1AA, they'll add it. Like really dedicated, making all these changes. ESPN NFL 2K5 is like the most active modder community in the sports gaming community. That game came out in 2004. There are still new mods for that game. Like it's built this huge community. So you can make the argument that even when those games are quote unquote worthless, where they're not selling for very much anymore, you can buy them for dirt cheap. There is value there. Blockchain games, once the market collapses, they are completely worthless. No one's going to go back to them. No one's going to jump into CryptoKitties now. And no one's going to jump into Axie Infinity now. If it wasn't already because of the hack and all the shady stuff that's going on there, it's at this point, the whole point of those games was a financial one. The whole point was to make money in those games. And now that there's no money to be made, no one's going to go near them. I mean, God help the person who's jumping into CryptoKitties now. But like, yeah, we'll do games preservation stuff maybe in another episode too. But like, there's nothing to preserve in these games. The community was the marketplace, and now the marketplace is no more. The game is basically, it's a non-game. It's like at this point doesn't exist anymore almost. And I've been following games for a very long time. I've never seen a game that was absolutely worthless. And these games, CryptoKitties is worthless. There's no value to it anymore, aside from us talking about it like this. And I just never encountered that.
So there's intrinsic value in every video game except these video games.
Yeah. And those other games, like I'll give you another example. It's not a sports one, like Phantasy Star Online. The Phantasy Star Online is beloved between the Dreamcast and the GameCube. The server shut down decades ago, but for a long while, people maintained their own servers so people could still keep playing them for years after it. And they didn't do that because they made any money. They did it because they valued something that wasn't monetary with that. The same reason people do NCAA 14. They don't do it for the money. They don't ask for anything in terms of money. They do it because they love sports and they love the game and they want to keep it going. But like nobody came in loving CryptoKitties. It was transactional the whole time. And going back to what I said before is that these games like CryptoKitties and Axie Infinity, and if Evolved Apes was a real game, and Fight Back Apes, if it ever comes out, and I don't think it's ever coming out, they're part of this system that even when it's working the way it's supposed to, it's still bad, where they build these exploitative levels of things like Axie Infinity, you know, doing all this on the backs of people who are barely making poverty wages, who have to log in online to Axie Infinity so they can continue making poverty wages. Well, some jagoff gets 75% of whatever they do, you know, like it's part of a bad system, perpetuating a bad system. And even when things are working properly, when they're not getting horribly hacked and people are doing insider trading stuff, it's still bad. And it's just so amazing. Like this was such a rabbit hole that I did not know I was getting into when I started. So again, next time we will get into what this means for the mainstream games industry, because a bunch of companies looked at the popularity of the blockchain and tried to see how they could capitalize on that. And that will do it for today's episode of Scandalous Games. If you like what we're doing and want to help the show, subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a rating. If you want to learn more, check out our website, scandalousgamespodcast.wordpress.com, where I publish the show notes and the sources for every episode. Our theme music is Occam Simply by Seek Knowledge via the Free Music Archive, used under a CC BY NCSA 3.0 US license. If you have a question, comment, or idea for a topic for a future episode, email us at scandalousgamespodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Kevin Impellizeri.
I'm Phil Thomas.
I'm Elford Stephens.
I'm Andy Hunter.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for part 2. Subscribe to Fat Roll Gaming on YouTube.